Hungarian Folk Tales. Green Peter. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there stood a large farm. A family lived on that farm with a husband, a wife, a son, and a daughter. When his wife died, the husband married again, so that there should be someone to bring up the children. But the new wife did not like the children, and she put poison in their food. When the children sat down to eat their supper, a white dove flew down and said, "Children, don't eat the soup because it's poisoned. Run away from home and never look back." The boy and his young sister walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, Green Peter, come here." It was a poor little fish cast ashore by the sea. "Pick me up, Green Peter, throw me back into the water, do good and you will prosper." So the boy happily helped the little fish. They walked and walked until they heard someone calling, Green Peter, come here." This time it was a little bird that had lost its flock. The bird begged the boy, "Green Peter, please put me on the branch so that I can fly on with my bird brothers." Green Peter put it up on the branch and the little bird said to him, "Thank you, do good and you will prosper." They walked and walked until they heard someone calling, "Green Peter, come here." A poor shriveled rosebush was calling. It begged the boy to water its roots. "Well, Green Peter," the rosebush said, "do good and you will prosper." Green Peter and his sister walked until they came to the town. When he reached the gate, the people called out to him, "Come in, Green Peter, come in, because there are already 99 heads on stakes and yours will be the 100th one." Even though Green Peter was afraid, he went in all the same. And he was told that the princess would marry the first man who could hide himself so well that she would never find him. So Green Peter went in and was ordered to hide himself 3 mornings running, because otherwise he would be beheaded. But if the princess failed to find him, she and half the kingdom would be his. Poor Peter wept and said to himself, "I've just managed to get away from my evil stepmother, and look what trouble I'm in again. Where could I possibly hide?" Suddenly the little fish appeared. "Why are you crying, Green Peter?" "Because the king said that unless I can hide from his daughter, he will have me beheaded." The fish opened its mouth and said, "Hide in here, Green Peter." So Green Peter slipped into the fish's mouth and it swam to the bottom of the deep sea, where it hid itself in the sand. The young princess stepped out into the corridor. She rubbed her eyes and said, "Come out, Green Peter, from the mouth of the fish, from the sand at the bottom of the sea." So Green Peter came out, he crawled sadly out of the mouth of the fish and went to the royal palace. The next morning he tried again. "Where, oh where shall I hide?" Suddenly the little bird flew down and said to him, "Why are you crying, Green Peter?" "Why indeed, if I don't manage to hide from the princess, I'll be beheaded." The little bird spread its wings and said, "Come on, hide beneath my wings," and it flew up behind the back of the sun. When the princess came out to the corridor, she rubbed her eyes and caught sight of him at once. "Green Peter, come out from behind the back of the sun, from beneath the bird's wings." The bird flew down to the ground and let Green Peter slip out from under its wings. Green Peter went sadly back, and next morning he again set out. But by now he was crying more than ever before. "Oh, oh, oh, what will become of me?" The rosebush came up to him and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to hide you." They went before the royal palace and stopped right in front of the corridor. The rosebush sat down and said, "Hide among my leaves and thorns," and it opened up so that it became more radiant than the sun itself. The princess came out. She rubbed her eyes, but she couldn't see Green Peter anywhere. "Rub your eyes again, my girl," said the king. "Or would you prefer to marry?" Again the princess rubbed her eyes. She looked and looked, but to no avail. She eventually grew tired of looking for the lad and called out to him, "Come out, Green Peter, come out from wherever you are. I can't see you anywhere." And so Green Peter came out at last. The young couple married right away. He got half the kingdom too, and the wedding feast lasted for 3 long days. I was there myself, and I had a fine time. I was even given a nice big bone to chew. Hungarian Folk Tales. Bees on the Train. Once upon a time, there was a large farm, and on that farm lived a man who had relatives from another village who came to visit him one day. They did not want to arrive empty-handed, so they brought him a gift of honey. The honey was quickly eaten with big chunks of fresh bread and was soon all gone. But while they sat eating, they discussed what a fine thing it was to keep bees and how simple it was with such rich rewards. The man could hardly wait for the next farm gathering where he suggested they should buy bees to make honey. The head farmer agreed and asked if there was anyone willing to work with bees. A man stood up and said he knew all there was to know about bees. He also told them that he knew where to buy bees if that was what they wanted, and everyone cheered with joy. They worked out how much money to give the man, and he set off to buy bees for the farm. He bought as many hives as he could put on a train. Then he had the whole car covered in red cloth and had red clothes and a red hat made to wear. He soon made friends with the bees and spoke to them. He opened the door, and the bees came and went as they pleased. When they were halfway back to the farm, the train drove into a side track, and the engine left. So the man asked the station master, "Why has the engine gone?" "Because," the station master said, "it was ordered to leave." "How long will the train be in the station?" "Who am I to know that?" "Don't talk to me like that, kind sir, because if I know that the train will be staying here for a whole day long, then I will let my bees out so they can have some air and food. The train will remain for at least 3 days more," the station master told him. The beekeeper went out and opened up the hives. Come out, children, and have some air. Find food for yourselves and return to your hives in time for the sunset." The bees had barely left when suddenly the station master had an order to start the train again. The beekeeper saw from the top of the carriage that the engine was coming and the train was hooked up, and they sat waiting for the station master's signal to start. The beekeeper ran to complain. "What is all of this? You never told me about this, station master, but I received an order to start the train. But that's impossible. My bees are still in the field. They cost a fortune." "What am I to do with your bees?" the station master replied. "I am a station master and not a beekeeper." "Well, at least leave the carriage with the bees here in the station so it can be coupled up with another train tomorrow." "That's impossible." And with these words, he started the train, which left the station with the bees' carriage. The beekeeper also left in his red clothes. While most of the bees were busy gathering honey, they sent a small party back to see if all was safe with their carriage in the station. Well, when they arrived, they saw that the train had taken their hives away. They returned to the meadow and told the others that their carriage had vanished. So all of the bees flew back to the station, and when they arrived, they found people waiting for a passenger train. Well, the bees thought that these people had stolen their hives, and so they stung them and stung them. The people cried out for help. The station master heard their calls, so he rushed out of his office, and he too was attacked by the angry swarm. His wife heard his cries and opened the window to see what was wrong. And as she opened the window, the bees rushed in and stung her so badly that she cried louder than all the rest. The station master heard this, and he ran upstairs to find out what had happened to his wife. And then he saw that the whole room was filled with bees. The two of them had to hide under a blanket to save their skins, but both were badly stung and their faces sadly swollen. The people waiting for the train all ran back to their homes, but the swarm of bees flew after them. The other villagers heard their shouts and ran out into the street. "Help! The village is being attacked by bees!" And they rang the big bell. The station master eventually came to his senses, and he called for the train to be sent back to the station, and it soon reappeared on the platform. The beekeeper, still dressed all in red, climbed on top of the carriage and started to call the bees back. "Come on, children, your hives are here." The bees, hearing their master's voice, gathered together and flew back in an orderly fashion. Those that had survived the bloody battle made their way quietly back into their hives. Then the beekeeper went to see the station master, but he could hardly recognize him. "You deserved whatever happened because you spoke to me so rudely." But the beekeeper eventually forgave the station master, and the beekeeper went back to the farm and laughed when he recalled what had happened that day. The bees soon started to make honey on the farm and made more money than all the farmers and animals put together. From then on, life on the farm was sweet. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Giant Beanstalk. Once upon a time, many years ago, there was a poor woman, and she had a son and a little cow. They had no food at home, and so the mother told her son, "Go, son, drive the cow to market, but be sure to get a good price for her." So the son took the cow to the market. He quickly found a buyer and exchanged the family cow for a single bean. The boy hurried home to show his mother what he had made at the market. The mother cried and cried when she learned that he had sold the cow for a single bean, but her son consoled her. "Don't be sad, mother. The old man who bought the cow said that I should plant this bean today and wait to see what happens." So the young boy planted the bean under the window in the small garden, but he was so anxious to see what would become of the bean that he couldn't even eat his supper. He awoke the following day to discover that the bean had grown overnight. He looked out of the window, but he couldn't even see the top of the giant beanstalk. He thought he'd take a better look, so he walked out of the house and stared up at the sky. However hard he looked, he still couldn't see the top of the beanstalk, so the boy said to his mother, "Well, Mother, now you can see how much that bean was worth. I'm going to climb to the top to see how high it is." He climbed and climbed until the great height made him feel dizzy in the head. There was a hole in the clouds, and the young boy peeped through and saw a spectacular house. He thought, "I'm tired after climbing, so I can stay here for the night and climb back down the beanstalk in the morning." He walked into the house and saw an old woman. The woman asked the boy, "What are you doing here, my child?" "My husband is a dragon. He has 3 heads. If he sees you, he'll eat you up." The boy begged the woman to hide him because he was terribly afraid of the dragon. The woman asked him, "Are you hungry, my child?" "Oh yes, I'm very hungry indeed." The woman immediately gave the boy some supper, and he thanked her for her kindness. "Come now, hide away at once as my husband is coming home." She brought a large bowl into the room and hid it underneath the bed. The little boy was very tired, but he was far too afraid to sleep. When the clock struck 12, he heard a terrible rumbling and grumbling sound. The fierce dragon walked into the house carrying a black hen under his arm. He put it on the table and said, "Lay an egg." And the black hen laid a golden egg. Then the dragon said again, "Lay another." And the hen laid as many golden eggs as the dragon wanted. But the fearsome dragon was very hungry. "Wife, fetch my supper." And his wife brought the dragon a meal. The dragon ate all his supper up. When he'd eaten his supper, the dragon told his wife to fetch his hurdy-gurdy. "Wife, is that a stranger I can smell in the house?" "Be calm, my dear. There is no stranger here." "But there is. Bring him here or I'll tear you to pieces too." But the wife continued to calm her monstrous husband. The dragon played music until he fell asleep. He slept so peacefully that he didn't even snore. The wife thought it best to go to bed too, because it was almost dawn. When the boy saw that the dragon and his wife were fast asleep, he crept out from underneath the bowl and grabbed the black hen. He took the dragon's hurdy-gurdy, and just before he disappeared back through the hole, he took a look back and saw that the dragon was running after him. So the young boy climbed quickly back down the giant beanstalk and grabbed a sharp axe. And he chopped the giant beanstalk down. The dragon fell to the ground and broke all his bones. Nobody had to be afraid of him anymore. Then he went to his mother, who was frightened by all the fighting. "Don't be afraid, Mother. We shall both have food from now on." "How so, son?" Then the son placed the hen on the table and stroked it, saying, "Lay an egg." And the black hen laid a glorious golden egg, and it kept laying golden eggs until the mother and son were both rich. And the boy played beautiful music all day long to his mother's delight. And if you don't believe my story, you can go and see for yourself.